others can listen to it later. I went to the doctor today because I've had a terrible gastroenteritis sort of thing while I was on vacation last weekend. Missed Aaron and Sarah's shower as a result. Could not get out of bed for 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
And it's been an absolute nightmare for me to get back from this thing. I'm drinking kombucha tonight with the hopes of having, this is the first time I felt like a little grilled cheese sandwich. I probably won't eat it all. And a little bit of wild rice chicken soup. I literally have zero appetite since Friday night. I had dinner with friends in Temecula. We had a weekend planned away. So lots of disappointment. And also great gratitude that I'm hopefully on this side of it. But then the other day I woke up and I have fluid behind my eardrum. So I am a little bit dizzy and a little not functioning, which was like, come on, God, I already did the one thing. You gave me another one. Like, I can't keep up with this. So I'm doing all the oils that I can think of, to basil and aromases and purification and deep relief, and just warm compresses, and just praying that it opens, because she does not want to put me on an antibiotic because there's no infection yet. But I'm hoping that it'll just naturally, like, I hope it's a nice little snap instead of a, which is what I expect it to be at this point because it's so clogged. Anyway, so
So
that
what did
thing
the doc,
stopped.
what did
So
the
I'm
doctor
going to say that
say?
that was my mom just sort of balancing my space back together.
So what did the doctor say?
So she detected the liquid behind the fluid behind
But
my
your gut
eardrum.
and stuff, that just has to work its way.
Yeah,
And
she's like, she said probably through the vomiting. This is terrible, but probably through the vomiting, because the respiratory uh, airway is shared, that I probably compromised something in the it would just made my respiratory airway more sensitive, and so it's just kind of messed up my whole sort of equilibrium of how my nose works and my allergies. I'm a little drippy, but I'm not, I don't know. I just am ready to be on the other side of it. So
Yes.
yeah, so I really appreciate everyone understanding. Monday night, I had traveled home with 100 degree 0.6 temperature,
Wow.
because when I took ibuprofen, that wasn't a happy case. So it didn't work for me. So yeah, so I was like, nope, we're just gonna get home and power through. So by the time I took my bath and started to sort of level out, I was too spent to spend time with you guys. So I apologize for that.
We'll
I
forgive you.
know I know that there were several other people who intended to join tonight and who could not. Those in Care Circle and also those just part of our Soul Care Sanctuary. So I will make this recording available to all. It'll be in the resources that everyone can access for book club. I won't have a book club. I don't know. I need to figure out where I'm going to put it, so that it's easy to find. It may just be embedded on the actual book club sort of thread. But for all intents and purposes, I did, on the way to vacation, get that far in the book. So I did not finish it, but I did take a few notes and did some underlining. But before we start tonight, I just wanted to review on Heartbeat a couple of things that I found really powerful. So I shared this one already, but just in case you don't get a chance, I want you to listen to Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman talk about Ryan Reynolds coming forward about being highly anxious.
That's why they're thinking, yeah, you're mad with him.
Let me see if I can get back to him. That was already started.
Oh, mate, you've been pretty open with your anxiety struggles, which I really applaud you for. Do you find being a dad makes it better or worse?
I think it makes it better because your focus is less on yourself and more on your kids. I know you know that too. And then I love that I have anxiety. I love that I've had anxiety because when I see my kids experiencing some of that, which is probably genetic.
Yeah.
I know how to address it in a way that is compassionate. I know how to address it in a way that actually allows them to feel seen in that anxiety. And I know that I can't just fix it. And I can communicate all of that stuff to them and with them. And I'm always kind of grateful for it. And, you know, my job benefits greatly from that. You know, people who have anxiety are constantly thinking into the future. You're constantly, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? Right. So you're always telling yourself stories. So when you're working in movies, and you're constantly, I'm not just like, when we're shooting Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm not just shooting the movie, I'm also sitting in the audience as its harshest critic, going, I don't like that, don't buy that, you know. So anxiety kind of creates that sort of ecosystem of awareness that I wouldn't otherwise.
I really applaud.
I'm going to pause there. You can go into more of their interview. I thought it was really significant. First of all, that it popped up for me as a recommended part of my feed. I mean, I follow Ryan Reynolds, but just his own take on anxiety. And then I had another one, probably because I'm talking about it and I'm looking for it, right? That was one of my questions that I wanted to talk about today was, what are you Googling as you read through the book? But I had this very significant conversation with my daughter. And that also made me think about when Ryan said, I was really glad that I've had anxiety so that I can help my kids through it. I think often we take for granted that we've just figured out our coping strategies. So my daughter came home for 2 weeks while her brother graduated, and she just left again today. And she said to me, why didn't you and Dad ever tell me that I have anxiety? And I said, I think she called it anxiety. And I said, oh, is that what you think it is? And I was just trying to be a good listener. She and I have had conflict mostly around her anxiety for a long time. But she said, well, Mom, I remember sitting in the car and not wanting to go into birthday parties and shaking my hands and feeling, feeling sweaty and mad and out of sorts. And I said, yeah, that was a lot, like I remember those days too. She said, well, some of my friends have had diagnoses of like ADHD and anxiety. And she said, so they just assumed I did too. And I said, why did they assume that? Well, because I still have some of those behaviors or some of those tendencies. And I said, okay, so what do you think of that? And she said, well, I guess I figured out what I need to do. And I said, we've given you a lot of tools and strategies. We didn't call it anxiety. We didn't label it, but we gave you tools and strategies and resources that you could use to kind of find your way when you were feeling out of sorts. Did she always use them? No. Do I always use them? Heck no. So it was a really great opening conversation to think about as I was reading Dr. Lerner's work about just parenting her, because I think that is it's a very real part of, and like, do we have to have a diagnosis? I think that's where I wanted to start our book club discussion tonight is, does it have to be a diagnosed anxiety disorder, or are we somewhat on a little bit of does anyone not feel concerned about the future or not have, kind of thoughts of what's going to happen later when they're going through life, or concern about socially, going to a party? Is that just a few, or is that many? And and what I'd like us to do as we talk about this is keep on topic, right? Like, is anxiety, do you have to be diagnosed? I think that's the question. Do you have to be diagnosed to say that you have anxious tendencies?
I'm going to say absolutely not, because my biggest anxiety, and I know you probably heard me talk about it, when my biggest anxiety is flying. It's getting packed and getting everything done and driving there. But once I get to the airport and get through security, I'm just like, it goes away. But then also, like you were just talking about with your daughter, it's like I've had many conversations with Lindsay about, well, Mom, my anxiety's through the roof right now. And so some of the ways that we used to get through it would be like, I would tell her, it's like, and what blood do you have running through your system? She goes, And so pardon me if this language gets to anybody, but we used to call it the Titian bitch blood, because Titian is my maiden name. And my mom was a single mom. She got divorced when I was in 5th grade. So I'm now a single mom. I said, you know what? You come from a very, very strong line of women. And, you know, so that was my way of getting through her. And we've always joked about getting a little tattoo somewhere that says TBB on it. And that's just the joke between,
Yeah.
but it helps get her through those times, you know, when
It's a name. You can name it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can name
But,
it. That's good. Linda, do you have a thought on that too?
Yeah.
I think it, to me, I think we all have anxiety to some degree, right? We all get anxious about different things. I think a diagnosis is only important when that anxiety is to the point where you're unable to live, you know, on a daily basis. So I definitely don't think we need that diagnosis if it's just, you know, not to the point where it's just completely overwhelmed us.
Yeah.
And we need some help, or we need, more than what we can gather with our tools and things that we have.
For sure. In chapter 4, Dr. Lerner talks about in praise of anxiety, and how anxiety actually helps keep us safe, right?
Safe.
When we're, when we notice our body's response to fear, those are good things to consider, you know. And that was part of Elena's training. Part of my training was to trust my gut, right? Trust my instinct, or as Lucinda talked about, you know, what is it within?
Right.
Yeah, and also making sure that we're that you know, we're asking for what we need. I underlined on page 47. So let's see. Yeah. On page 47, it says anxiety plays a crucial role in helping us to negotiate the opposing forces of separateness and togetherness. Our anxiety signals us to seek more connection when too much distance sets in, and to seek more space when the togetherness force is too intense. So it doesn't need to, I mean, again, in relationships, being aware of our, you know, each of our relationships with friends, relationships with, you know, close significant others, all of that. But it is one way that she calls it a barometer. And also, if you can note it as a smaller dose of anxiety, right? Like instead of it getting so big, can you you can start to notice it earlier, based on cues that your body's telling you or your brain is telling you. Molly, I saw you came live for a second. Do you want to get in on this conversation, this question?
I almost think being diagnosed can sometimes be a bad thing. Just because people then label you a certain way and they don't see the person that you are behind that diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And other people use it as a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, I can't do this because I have ADHD, or because I have depression, or because, and it's just comes down to, I don't really want to, but I don't know how to tell you no.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can see that diagnosis as being a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, my mom and dad are in mental health, school counseling. So that was what shaped a lot of our decision to parent Elena the way we, and Dawson the way we've done. But it doesn't mean it was the best way. It just means that I told her, I said, well, now you're 20, so you get to do with it what you want. You know, you've captured some ideas from us, and I sent her a picture. I have to figure out which picture it was. I sent her a picture from one of the chapters because I thought, oh, this kind of goes along with what she was talking about, to just help her define it more for herself and really understand what it is, so that she can embrace it in a new and better way. On page 55, she talks more about anxiety getting really bad. And Molly, I think you're speaking, or Linda, you were speaking to this about debilitating, right? Anxiety where you can't function.
Right.
So if you're hyperventilating, feel nauseated, throwing up, get dizzy, sweaty, antsy, jittery, tense, etc. The panic attack is a real thing, and helping somebody be able to identify that for themselves is really key. But it says, she also says, when we develop a fear of fear itself, then we're lost. So it's not going to such an extreme that we can't come back from that either. That we haven't dove in so deeply that we don't have a true sense of how we can function with fear, because a healthy sense of fear is important. We don't want to completely numb from that emotion. That's part of who we are. Even though the Bible says, do not fear, we fear a lot, and that's normal, and that's okay. What about one of the questions I asked of the group was, is there a topic or a story that has stayed with you most from reading? I mean, again, I've underlined some things, but I thought she had some interesting stories that she shared to illustrate her points. What did you find to be true?
For me, it was the get out and walk badass story.
Yeah.
That one, yeah, that one really spoke to me, and
In a practical
something
way.
I really relate to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I liked that one too.
I like the one about Felix.
Tell me
Felix,
more about that, Lucinda.
where and I not that far into the book. I'm not a big reader. I can read, obviously, but I struggle with just
Yeah.
finding the way to. So anyway, I haven't gotten that far. I'm through chapter 1, so that's a start.
Yep.
But
It was about the cat.
Oh,
It
the
was about
cat.
yeah, the one that
Oh, yeah.
so I underlined it. It said the only being I have ever known who was entirely free of fear and always in the flow was my cat. Just
Yeah.
I think
Or Molly's cat. Maybe it's Molly's cat that's always without fear.
yeah. I mean, I think Vivian could be named Felix too, because
Yes, you also,
yeah, she has no fear at all. And I'm like,
yeah.
but just being able to, and I have, and she just popped up, so she might come, but she
Yeah.
doesn't come across the computer. She's mad at me because I shut the window, because she likes to climb on the screens, and I'm tired of replacing screens. So
Yeah.
I have a little plaque on my shelf, and it says, courage is fear that has said its prayers. So that's, I don't know where I got it from, but it's always stays on my living room shelf set.
Yep. Awesome.
I thought the traveler with the go stand at the elevator, and you have to get so
Yes.
many no's or not interested. I was like, wow, that would be pretty powerful. And then I was like, but even in a strange city, I don't know that I could do that.
Yep.
Because the author, said, it helped that he wasn't from here and he couldn't run into anybody that he knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I still don't know that I could stand at the elevator and ask 20 people or 50 people to go have coffee with me in one day.
Well, and it was interesting though, because she was clear to not make it awkward, right?
Right.
She was really clear in the
Right.
direction. So I think that helped. And it wasn't going to take, I mean, he knew it was going to take multiple requests, but he figured out how not to make it seem too awkward. I was watching
Right.
Yeah, similarly, yeah, that exposure therapy, they call it, right? Like if you're afraid of the flying, not flying, but having everything organized, giving yourself that exposure therapy, the more you do it, the less anxious you become, for sure. So yeah, that was powerful. How about the rubber band strategy? Did you like that? The rubber band strategy was where
I've actually done that.
yeah, how did it work for you?
Um, it worked. But I was amazed at how quickly, when I quit snapping my rubber band, that I fell back into my old tricks,
Yeah.
my old ways that I dealt. So, but it's something I would revisit again.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. She says on page 71, hello again, you silly little critical thought. How are
Yeah.
you today? Right? You
Yeah.
can kind of tell in how she italicized the words. If she's alone, she may say this out loud. Then I liked this image too, because I have only ever, kind of playing around probably in high school, I did it for a habit thing, right? Like you wanted to stop biting your nails, you did that sort of thing. Um, then Katie puts the thought in an imaginary red dumpster and lets it ride down a railroad track where it gets dumped into a pile at the end of the track. Now, if I think about that before we do Aroma Freedom, wouldn't that be a great visual of, okay, so we're going to collect all the negative thoughts that we could have about this particular subject, and we're going to run them all to the end of the track and dump them all off. She says she doesn't try to stop the thoughts, which is impossible, but she's found a way to say howdy to them and to use her wonderful sense of humor to give such judgmental thought a little welcome and send off. She doesn't think too much about why her brain wraps around negative thinking. Her belief is that the variations in her thought patterns have more to do with the vicissitudes of her weird brain chemistry, as she calls it, than psychological. So another example of how how we can use our neocortex, use our conscious thinking to really kind of use it as a tool strategy to move through. Linda, back to yours about going outside, badass.
Yes.
We talked about that in one of our sessions about awe, right? And about taking time, like being out, like how we can change our state in an instant by moving to the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's great to see it reflected in, I mean, something so basic and so spiritual reflected in a psychological book for self-help of how to really center again, how to get things going. I'm excited to read the next part about it starts with your anxious workplace, and some of the reviews I read on Goodreads, that this part about from the workplace, and Lucinda, this might interest you more, is just to jump to chapter 7. They said the stories about workplace were really powerful. And given that you're on a little bit of a break from your coworkers, it may be a good time to read about that. Shoot. Oh my gosh. I have to call somebody else. Okay. So, yeah, so that's good. A couple other questions. Does the book make you want to explore anxiety, shame, and fear more, do you think? Do you think it's helpful to sort of take an inner look?
I'm going to say for me, even though I haven't gotten that far into the book yet, I think yes, because now that, then going back to my daughter, yeah, I've been through parenting, but just coming up with some techniques that I might, because I'm sure I'm going to be getting questions and I want to approach them not like, oh, mom, why are you telling me that? But that might be the response I get. So this whole thing with her getting ready and everything, I've taken a step back. I've offered help. I said, well, if you want my help, I'm off this day and this day. And I'm not hurt if they don't call me, but it's, as she told me the other day, she goes, Mom, it's my house and I don't like purple. Because the room that the nursery is going to be, it's a very nice, it's very calming to me. I would love to have that color room. It's my house and I don't like it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know,
She may change her mind after the baby's born. Who knows?
yeah, if they don't get it painted before then. So
Right.
I'm not, so
Yeah.
I'm here if you need my help and
Yeah.
let me know. But
Yeah, it gives you perspective and how you're going to walk along the journey with as a grandparent.
Yep.
That's huge for sure. For sure, for sure.
I think there were some areas that I will probably research more. And I kind of feel like she gave a lot of scenarios, but in some instances, there wasn't like, I guess, a clearer, if this, do this, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Solution.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you feel like it was normalized? The anxiety was normalized in her words? In
I
her
think so.
examples?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Things that we may have in the past. I think too, I mean, it's again, to Molly's point, we can definitely overdiagnose and there are negative
Mhm.
results at that. However, we can also be more and more sort of aware of, and as much as we, as I don't watch TikTok, but reels of teenagers, right, and anxiety and depression and without getting into too much detail, we do hang on to a diagnosis as kind of a life jacket at times. um, I think it helps. It makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes because kids are so open about it now, or
Right.
they're so sort of kind of gashed open, right? Like, this is me. and
Yeah.
and how do I embrace that? All of them, even as they're trying to kind of messily sort out the blemishes, or messily sort out the parts that don't, appear clean and neat and tidy, and that they don't have sorted out and they don't figure out. And it's kind of it's messy. Like,
Mhm.
I have to learn to embrace the messy in that. I am on a call. I love you too. My dad leaves tomorrow for Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Now he only lives 2 miles away. He stops by unexpectedly. So I saw him pull up and tried to say, I'm on a call. But I saw him this morning too. Bless him, bless his heart.
next time he pops in, tell him to just pop on the screen and say hi.
Well, he would know all of you. That's the hilarious part is here I wanted him to scoot. He would have chatted you up. This is what I sent to Elena when I was reading in the car. If you are alive, you have an anxiety disorder.
Right, disorder. There you go.
Right? That's it in one sentence. This is not to say that you are feeling as debilitated as Eliza, or that you meet the criteria for a psychiatric diagnosis, as Eliza did. Do not mean to trivialize or erase the profound suffering of those who suffer from severe, relentless anxiety, paralyzing panic attacks, post-traumatic stress disorder, and phobias. But I think what Molly, your perspective gives us is that holistic look at how do you seek good mental wellness with diagnoses, so that you can have medicated bliss, or if necessary, so that you have a healthier perspective about it. So, and even the last part, Susan Jeffers is she wrote, I have to look up her book. I meant to do that, but then I got sick, so I didn't do it. Susan Jeffers says, anxiety activates the little chatterbox in our head that spews out catastrophic scenarios and serious doubts about our ability to cope, do new things, and handle whatever life brings. It drives our lower self thinking, which spurs us to operate from our most reactive self. So one of my friends said, she complimented me the other day. She said, you take everything in stride. You don't get to, you're not super, kind of bowled over by things. And I said, well, I've learned through parenting Elena, particularly as my firstborn, I've learned that I can either react and like cause everything to sort of escalate, or kind of like Lucinda did about the purple wall, I can listen and respond, right? Like, and just kind of take it all in. And this gets me this gets me the relationship that I want at the end of the day. The reaction does not help me grow. It does not help her grow. So that was helpful. I'm trying to think of I'm going to look up the book really quickly that Susan Jeffers, one of her books is called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. That may be the one that I'm most familiar with. But feel the fear and do it anyway is her quote. So if you've ever heard anybody say that, that was from Susan Jeffers. How about for you, Molly?
I'm learning how to listen and respond rather than react. And coming from a family that has multiple of us with different mental health issues, it's interesting to see how we interact with each other and how one person's anxiety or whatever can trigger another person's, and then how that washes over. There's 6 of us living on this 10-acre property, and it's interesting to see how one of the bipolar people can affect all of the rest of us, and how that reaction feeds into their kind of either their manic or their joyful time. So learning how to manage and interact with other people that I know have similar stuff going on as me has become really helpful and important to learn.
Yeah. Well, and also with 6 of you, not everyone's going to be you're not, like, I think about a horse race starting, right? You're not all going to be tracking your own journey toward awareness, because even with mental health diagnosis, there comes a bit of self-awareness that has to be in play so that you can make those choices, right?
Right. And there also has to be an awareness in the person that they really do have something mental going on and the chemistry is not right. Yeah. And they have to be willing to accept their part in the dynamics that's going on.
Right.
So that's been interesting, particular with one person who doesn't acknowledge that he is still bipolar, and he doesn't want to be medicated, which is perfectly fine with me. But you have to find other ways to manage it right, where it doesn't affect the rest of us.
Yeah.
So learning the interactions has been a big eye-opener for me this last year.
Yeah. Living in community, being in community with others, and recognizing that, we all come at different levels. So that kind of leads to a final question. Can you change? And at the end of 80 kind of chapter, I don't know what chapter it is. 6, chapter 6, at the end of chapter 6, she starts talking about why we fear change. And it's funny because we talk about this a lot with aroma freedom and goal setting and micro planning and things that we do in here as we think about the way our spirit kind of diverts us from tragedy or from things that make us afraid. But sometimes in that in the comfort that we find, we don't pursue beyond our
Right.
comfort level. Does that make
Right.
sense? So I'm looking at page 85, and at the bottom, she says, the challenge of change requires us to anticipate resistance from within and without, and to manage our own anxiety so that we can be our best selves when the other person, out of his anxiety, acts like a big jerk. So that's kind of what you're getting at there, Molly, and that same sort of
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, right, in your own community. And so she says, right, like one little thing at another, change occurs slowly and rightfully so. Making one small change allows you to see how much anxiety you can sit with and how well you stay on track when counter moves come your way. And she uses an example of her mom and dad, and the way her mom used to try what my mom would call triangle, which means kind of pull her to her side, to her mom's side, when she was mad at her dad. And so, yeah, so being really being really conscious of how somebody this is ear infection. I don't know what this is. This is like I can't come up with words. Um, when somebody's trying to manipulate a situation to get what they want, we have to be aware that we're seeking our own best response and what's in the best interest of ourselves and the other person, so that we can move through move through our own awareness, our own process, right? And stay strong through changing the behaviors that people have become accustomed to and not allowing them to fester or to continue. And then she ends with this crazy story about how her dad then gave her a special rug to hold on to. And so she put it up in her office in the top of her house, and it got peed on by the cat.
Yes. That story just freaked me out. I was like, how could she do that? How could
right? Like, what in the world? She thought she did everything right, putting it up away from everyone and everything as a, kind of a like something to hold on to from her father, right? And then it got peed on. What? So even when we try to protect,
right.
yeah, even when we try to protect the relationship, there could still be an outlying resource that pees on it.
Yeah.
Not really, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that she was, yeah, I love that she was challenged by and encouraging it, looking at why we fear change, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about this more next on Thursday, the 6th. But we're going to start to make the shift to brazen because what brazen is that next level of courage, right? So we really have to unpack what we are afraid of. Is it only not being at the airport on time with everything I need, Lucinda? Or is it, a fear of, quote unquote, being caught with your pants down and not getting, not having all of your ducks in a row, or not somebody kind of seeing something out of place, right? That messes with you. So really kind of unpacking, I think that's what I'm looking forward to doing in the next week as I as I read through this, especially with the work stuff, how can I take little notes about my own fear, anxiety, and shame that I'm holding on to, and start to release them. But first I have to identify them and name them, which can be kind of the hardest task. We can be like, oh yeah, I'm not like that. Well, but that's not me. And I'm not that. When truly we have tendencies that keep us held.
And you know how you're talking about the anxiety that I have. I've been doing the better. The last couple of times I've flown, I said, you know what? I know this is going to hit me and it's going to hit me hard. So what I start to do is I call mentally packing,
Mhm.
you know, like a week before instead of and a lot of
So
my
you
fear.
figured out a coping strategy, right? You figured
Yeah.
out like a task.
So I do a little bit this day, then a little bit this day, then a little bit this day. So when it comes time to go, everything's already laid out. It just has to be put in the suitcase, or it might even be in the suitcase. But my ex-husband used to hate flying. So when I would fly with him and the two kids, it was like flying with three kids.
Yeah.
So not only did I have to get the kids ready, but I also had to make sure they had their stuff. But a couple of the last times we flew together as a family, I'm like, I told Robert and Lindsay, Elizabeth was, God, I don't know how old she was, but she was still pretty teeny, maybe 2 or 3 or something. But I told Robert and Lindsay, instead of packing for them, I said, I just gave them a list. You need 4 pairs of pants, 3 pairs of whatever,
Yeah.
3 of this, 2 of this. I don't care what you bring, but these are the numbers that you have to do. And I looked at my husband at the time, I said, and you're packing your own stuff. I don't care
Yeah.
what you bring.
Yeah.
And but just let that, so it's.
Yeah. So again,
It's-
it's historical. It's not just present, it's also past. So now it's like, okay, where do I go in the future with it?
Yep.
And for me, that was part of my ex-husband's story too. So now my kids have really weird travel habits that I don't share. And Jerry said this morning, we needed, like, I sent Elena $20 through Apple Cash because I was hoping she could get something to eat. She didn't have any time to stop, but she doesn't eat because her dad doesn't eat. So she goes a whole day with no food because dad doesn't
When
want
she travels?
if he travels.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Brian would get a little stomach upset on the plane. So
Mm-hmm.
we just decided not to even try it. And he would also be frustrated that it was so much more money at the airport, whatever. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
too expensive. Because I would pack sandwiches when the kids were little. I would, take snacks. They were fine, but they've been traveling just with him more, so, more in the last 12 years. So now they have their own behaviors that they've adopted, and I don't have to. They're old now. They're going to figure that out.
Yep, they are.
You know, I'm
They
kind
are.
of like that too on the day of flying. I don't eat until after I get through security. And then I'm just like, okay, now I can eat because I'm here. And I don't have to worry about getting
But at
that up.
least you have a plan. I mean, I'm texting her at 12 o'clock today, knowing that she only had a donut this morning. She's like, well, I had an energy bar too. I'm like, you're going to not get in, like, you're going to be traveling the whole day. Like, energy bars and water bottles are not enough to sustain you. But that's how dad does it. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But again, we learn. I have a little hummingbird friend that just came by. We learn from the people in our lives who taught us. And just like cutting the ham off cutting the end of the ham off to fit the pan story, sometimes that old, we have new pans. We have new, bigger pans that fit a whole ham, and nothing has to be cut off the end. The butt of the ham doesn't have to be cut off because it fits in a bigger pan. Because in this generation, we have X amount of dollars set aside for food at the airport, or we have, a substantial amount of places to stay and eat and to-go items and things that we can pack for ourselves. Anyway, I just think about how we have to change the narrative from what was to what is coming. I also want to dive in on next Thursday a little bit more on shame. So I'll bring a little bit more on that. I will post this week Brene Brown's vulnerability message, her TED Talk. It's been a while since I've watched it, but that might be important for me to see again and share with you all. That was a huge shift for a lot of women in the 2010s, I would say, that first came out and really kind of launched Brene's career as a researcher and teaching people about the awareness of vulnerability and shame and where we come out on that. So it's a little more recent than what, not much, but a little bit more recent than what Harriet Lerner is bringing to us. So hopefully that will feel relevant next week as well. Thanks for joining tonight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you feel better and better.
Thank you. Me too. This actually gave me hope that not all is lost. I got through. I did it. We did it.
Yay.
We have a call at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure about
Oh my
those.
goodness.
I'm on maybe on that one, but it's going to be a great time because they're bringing in Young Living corporate to help. So I felt like my energy being here, I'll just let corporate take it here and I'll be fine.
So corporate's going to be on our call tomorrow
Yeah.
for the summer sizzle.
We hooked you
Corporate's
up.
going to be there.
We hooked you up. McKay and Casey.
Awesome. That's because they love the LWN group.
I know. I'm so excited. So excited. Aw.